when looking to retain strength while leaning out, what form of cardio? I wouldn't. I would try to stay away from cardio as long as you can, reduce the calories not as much as you can, but as little as you can while trying to lean out. I talked about this before in one of the other rapid fire questions. Don't try to go about it too fast. Go about it slow. Always try to add things in as late as you possibly can. So anybody who's dieted or got lean knows that at a certain point in time, you may have to
get the fuck up. Simon says, get the fuck up. Throw your hands in the sky.
Westside before the bands is pretty much, we didn't use the bands. I mean, it was using the dynamic waves. The waves, though, were a little bit longer. When I first came to Westside, there were 5-week squat waves. The bench wave always stayed the same. It was a flat wave. It never really cycled at all. The squat wave was a 5-week wave, 4 weeks ascending, and then a descending way down. I can't remember the exact percentages, but the percentages were a little bit higher. I want to say that the heaviest weight of the wave was 70%. In the time I got there, Louis started moving away from weeks of 5x5 to 8x3, and so the reps changed. Once I got there, everything was pretty much 8 sets of 2 with the 5-week wave, and then we took the 5th week out. We took the down week out because it's, when you really think about it, it doesn't make much sense because the first week is also a low percent week, so it was really 2 down weeks, and the 2 down weeks were really hard to kind of come back from. And I learned that lesson before coming to Westside using linear periodization. I tried to use more of a non-linear periodization model where I had down weeks, and I would go from a high percentage to a low percentage and then to a little bit higher percentage the week following, and it was always a fucking nightmare. And it can be done, but you have to play around with the percents and you have to kind of know what you're doing to be able to maximize that more efficiently. But I'm not saying it can't be done, because it can be done to where you're going to have that down and then back up again, but sometimes it needs to stare back up and it can't jump over what it was preceding, and it will be different again for each person. What were my reasons for leaving Westside? The number one reason was I couldn't grab a squat bar anymore. My right shoulder, this was 2005, was diagnosed as needing replaced, and I'm not willing to replace it because it's non-symptomatic, with the exceptions of not having the range of motion and not being able to grab a squat bar. So you really can't squat, you really can't powerlift if you can't grab the fucking bar. And my body was beat to fuck. It was. I had other issues as well. Some videos are floating around with me shaking like crazy. There are a lot of things that were kind of falling apart that were, I think, all based upon stemming from the shoulder, but that can kind of be debated. But right around the same time was the fifth year of Elite FTS, basically going nowhere and not making any money. Kids, ignoring my kids. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't really want to. There are a lot of reasons, for doing that. And I couldn't and didn't want to stay in an environment and be a coach and not be a lifter. When I was there for as long as I was, I needed separation from the sport because it wasn't an easy thing to do in the first place, especially when it was such a huge part of my identity for so many years. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life, is basically walk away from the sport. And it really wasn't on my terms. I didn't want, nobody wants to go out ever. I mean, if you're a long-term meathead, nobody ever wants to go out, but you certainly don't want to go out, not on your own terms. And so that was the reason. Could I, have stayed and helped coach? Yeah, thinking back now, I probably should have for a couple years, but I didn't. And I can't, like I said before, I've earned my regrets. You can earn your own, so I found ways to give back since then and have nothing but great respect for Louis and all the time that I spent there. If it wasn't for Louis, I would not be where I am today in business, as a person. I owe him more than probably anybody else in this world. So, there's no other way to answer that one. Should females be different than programs for men? That can be debated. Some will say yes, some will say no. I've had experience training both. In some cases, yes. What I really find is really different isn't really the female to male issue, it's the weight class issue. Lighter people, lighter lifters, 181 and below, seem to need a little bit more frequency and a little bit more pounding and accessory work than what the heavier guys do, or women. So I don't really know if it's male or female, or if it's more weight class from what I've seen, but that's just my personal opinion. Favorite upper back assistance exercise when competing, I'm gonna say face pulls. Face pulls carry over to every movement, teaches you how to keep your shoulder blades together and down. For recovery purposes, would I rather have a lifter sleep or do more training? Fucking sleep. Easy one. Tell us about some of your injuries. That would take fucking forever. How to fix the knees caving in the squat, poor mobility, or just plain weak. How about just reducing the weight and focus on pushing your knees out? And then when you can do that, continue to do that, then increase the weight. How am I doing today? I'm doing fucking awesome. The question from Malik I've referred to a few times. It's about the injuries. I'm going to answer in detail. It'll probably be the first one that I do after knocking all these things out. If we were allowed to make a powerlifting program with 6 movements after the big 3, what would you add? Assuming that you're a beginner, I go back and do the big 3 again. How's that for a simple answer? In your experience with conjugated periodization, is consistently training above 90% worth the risk in the long run? If you're an intermediate or advanced and you know what you're doing, yes, it is, because there is not a risk. The risk is in the stupidity, not in the actual structure and organization of the training. I'll address that when I get to the conjugate training thing as well. How did I get started with lifting? It was always part of the sport. My first meet, I remember the guy saying, look, you need to order a squat suit. I didn't have a bench shirt because they weren't around at the time. So I had to order a squat suit and then pull on a deadlift singlet, but it was just assumed that everybody wore a squat suit. So it was a single ply suit. I didn't know double ply existed until I came to Westside. And then knee wraps. So it's just what everybody else was doing, so it's what you did. So it wasn't like getting into equip lifting, it was just getting into lifting. Equipment was part of the lifting. Raw lifting was never an option when I competed at all. Even if I wanted to, there was no way to enter raw on the entry fee or the entry form. I just would have been, some people kind of did, and we looked at it like, dude, what are you doing? Because it just didn't make any sense. Like, why are you squatting in a singlet? Well, yeah, you're gonna squat lower. You're giving up, 100 pounds, 200 pounds. Some people, as the gear got more advanced, the more you're giving up by not using the best gear that you could. The best alternatives to steroids, any supplement to help you pack on muscle fast. My answer to that is no. Food, just eat more food. There is no supplement or no alternative to steroids. You're just wasting your fucking money. Just buy more food and train and be consistent with your training. Be consistent with your eating and just keep doing it. People jump to the fastest, easiest way instead of working through shit that in the long run it may get them over that hump, but that roadblock's just going to come again, and then you've already played your ace card. If it's wearing gear in powerlifting or taking steroids or whatever it is, you jump over that hump too fast, it's just going to come back, man. So you need to learn how to overcome sticking points while you're clean, or while you're raw. So the process, and the frustration, and the experimentation, and how to ask different people and how to look for the answers and who to ask for the answers and how to figure shit out for yourself. Figure that out first, because you'll go much further in the long run by doing that. Will Dave ever be lean again? I hope so. I want to, I just don't want to do the work to do it. How's that for an honest answer? What should I do to get rid of my love handles, Russian twists? It's fucking diet, man. None of that, no exercise is going to get rid of your fucking fat. If you're fat, you're going to have to diet to get the fat off. It's that simple. When looking to retain strength while leaning out, what form of cardio? I wouldn't. I would try to stay away from cardio as long as you can, reduce the calories not as much as you can, but as little as you can while trying to lean out. I talked about this before in one of the other rapid fire questions. Don't try to go about it too fast. Go about it slow. Always try to add things in as late as you possibly can. So anybody who's dieted or got lean knows that at a certain point in time, you may have to add cardio in. You may have to put more training sessions in. You may have to reduce the carbohydrates more, or whatever diet protocol you're using, and reduce the calories some. All these things are going to happen at a certain point in time. You don't want to start with all of them, because then after 4 weeks, when you start to get stuck, you have nowhere to go. Optimally, you don't want to have to use any of them, and then be at the end. And then if you really want to tighten up and go a little bit leaner, you have all these other options to work from. What size bands should I use to convert my power rack into a sex swing while I'm not training, or is there any attachment for that? The strong bands, you're going to need about 3 of them. You're going to double loop 2 of them together so it reaches to the top of the rack, and then you're going to double loop another one into the first one, so you have like a swing harness that you can sit in. One goes against the lower back, one goes right underneath the hamstrings, which creates the swing, which is good for the up and down, like if you're laying underneath, or for the standing, and swing. I mean, there's all kinds of options, man. It's you're not thinking, you're not being creative enough. It's definitely there. I don't recommend doing this while other members are in the gym. It might not go over that well. But we actually have seen a video with our stuff being used in such a way.
I saw the last one.
That's it for these things here. So we're going to go back through and hit a couple of these things in more detail.